The summer heat hung thick over Cedar Rapids, Iowa, turning the pavement into shimmering waves of distortion. Officer Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he pulled up to the apartment complex on Riverside Drive, his K-9 partner Rex panting in the back seat. It was supposed to be a routine domestic disturbance call, the kind they'd handled dozens of times before. Rex, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a glossy black and tan coat, had been Jake's partner for 3 years. In that time, they'd become an inseparable team, reading each other's signals with the precision of a married couple. Rex had an impressive record: 12 criminal apprehensions, 3 missing persons found, including a 6-year-old boy who'd wandered into the woods during a snowstorm. The dog had never shown aggression outside of protocol, never bitten anyone who wasn't an active threat. As Jake opened the patrol car door, Rex jumped out with practiced ease, his tail wagging slightly. The sounds of shouting echoed from apartment 2B on the second floor. Jake radioed dispatch, confirming his arrival, and began ascending the outdoor stairwell with Rex at his heel. The scene inside apartment 2B was chaos incarnate. A young couple screamed at each other while their teenage son tried to intervene. Furniture was overturned, a lamp lay shattered on the floor, and the acrid smell of alcohol permeated the air. Jake immediately went into de-escalation mode, his voice firm but calm, attempting to separate the arguing parties. Rex remained at Jake's side, alert but controlled, his ears swiveling to track each voice. The dog's training was evident in every muscle, ready to protect his handler but waiting for the command. What Jake didn't know was that in apartment 2A, directly next door, 3-year-old Emma Chen had woken from her nap at her grandmother's place. Emma was a beautiful child with glossy black pigtails and dimples that appeared when she smiled. She was curious, fearless, and absolutely loved animals. Her favorite stuffed toy was a floppy-eared rabbit named Mr. Hoppers, which she carried everywhere. Emma's grandmother, Mrs. Chen, had stepped into the kitchen to prepare an afternoon snack. In those brief moments, Emma heard the commotion next door. The shouting voices, the heavy footsteps, the sound of something falling, all of it drew her curious mind like a magnet. She toddled to the front door, which her grandmother had accidentally left unlocked after bringing in groceries. Her small hands turned the knob, and she slipped out into the corridor, Mr. Hoppers tucked under her arm. Back in apartment 2B, the situation was escalating. The husband had grabbed a beer bottle, smashing it against the wall. Jake stepped forward, his hand moving toward his radio to call for backup. Rex tensed, his training kicking in as he sensed the potential threat to his handler. Then the apartment door burst open. The teenage son, trying to escape the chaos, had flung it wide. The sudden movement, the noise, the broken glass, everything happened at once. Rex's senses went into overdrive, processing multiple threats simultaneously. And that's when Emma appeared in the doorway. She'd been drawn by the noise, her curious 3-year-old mind wondering what all the fuss was about. When she saw the big dog, her face lit up with pure joy. Emma had been begging her parents for a puppy for months. To her innocent eyes, Rex wasn't a police dog. He was the most beautiful dog she'd ever seen. "Puppy," she squealed, reaching out her tiny hand. Everything happened in slow motion and at lightning speed simultaneously. Jake turned, his mouth opening to shout a warning. The husband lunged toward the door. The teenager stumbled backward, and Rex, overwhelmed by the chaos, the sudden movement, the small figure approaching rapidly in his peripheral vision, reacted on pure instinct. He lunged. Emma's delighted squeal turned into a scream of terror and pain. Rex's teeth caught her shoulder and upper arm, the force of his protective instinct overriding his training. Jake's horrified shout, "Rex, release," echoed through the hallway. Rex immediately let go, his training reasserting itself, but the damage was done. Emma crumpled to the floor, blood blossoming across her white t-shirt with its cheerful rainbow print. Mr. Hoppers fell from her grip, landing in a growing red pool. No, Jake pulled Rex back, his heart shattering into 1,000 pieces as he stared at the injured child. Mrs. Chen's scream pierced the air as she emerged from her apartment, dropping the plate of apple slices she'd been carrying. The next minutes were a blur of horror. Jake called for an ambulance, his hands shaking as he applied pressure to Emma's wounds with his shirt. The little girl's cries were weak, her face pale. Rex, confused and distressed by Jake's anguished commands, whimpered and tried to approach, but Jake ordered him to stay back. The ambulance arrived within 6 minutes, but it felt like hours. Paramedics rushed Emma onto a stretcher while Mrs. Chen rode with them, her face a mask of shock and terror. She kept repeating Emma's parents' phone number, her voice breaking on every digit. As the ambulance's sirens faded into the distance, Jake stood in the hallway, his hands covered in a child's blood, his faithful partner sitting at his feet looking confused and anxious. The other officers who'd arrived as backup stared at him with expressions ranging from sympathy to horror. Within 2 hours, footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera had leaked to the local news. The video showed Emma reaching toward Rex, then the attack, though the angle mercifully obscured the worst of it. But it was enough. By evening, Cedar Rapids was divided. Protest signs appeared outside the police station. Dangerous dogs don't deserve badges competed with support our K-9 officers. Emma's parents, David and Lynn Chen, arrived at the hospital to find their daughter in surgery, and their world forever changed. Jake sat in the police station's interrogation room, not as an investigator this time, but as the investigated. Through the window, he could see Rex in the kennel, the dog who'd saved lives now facing an uncertain fate. The bite that took seconds would create consequences that lasted years. David Chen's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white as he sped toward Mercy Medical Center. His wife Lynn sat beside him, her phone pressed to her ear as she tried to get coherent information from her mother-in-law between the woman's sobs. The words that did come through painted a nightmare. Attack, dog, surgery, blood. "Drive faster," Lynn whispered, her voice hollow. Just that morning, they'd kissed Emma goodbye before heading to work, her sticky fingers leaving jam prints on David's tie. She'd giggled and promised to be good for Grandma. That laughing, fearless little girl seemed like a memory from another lifetime now. They burst through the emergency room doors to find Mrs. Chen in the waiting area, her clothes stained with Emma's blood. The older woman collapsed into her son's arms, apologizing over and over in Mandarin. "I only looked away for a minute, just 1 minute to cut the apples." Dr. Richard Hartley, the pediatric surgeon, emerged 2 hours later. His face was kind but exhausted. The bite caused significant tissue damage to her right shoulder and upper arm. "We've repaired the muscle tears and closed the wounds with 23 stitches. The good news is there's no nerve damage and no major arteries were severed. She was very, very lucky." Lucky? The word felt obscene to David. His 3-year-old daughter was in a hospital bed because of a police dog, and the doctor called it lucky. "Can we see her?" Lynn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They followed Dr. Hartley down the sterile corridor to the pediatric ward. Nothing could have prepared them for the sight of Emma in that hospital bed. She looked impossibly small, dwarfed by the equipment surrounding her. IV lines ran into her tiny hand. Bandages covered her right shoulder and arm. Her face was tear-stained, her eyes closed in medicated sleep. Lynn's knees buckled. David caught her, and they clung to each other beside their daughter's bed, their tears falling silently. The first night, Emma woke screaming. The nurses assured them it was normal. The pain medication was wearing off. But Lynn knew better. She saw the terror in her daughter's eyes, the way Emma's gaze darted around the room as if searching for threats. When a therapy dog volunteer appeared in the doorway, part of the hospital's comfort animal program, Emma's screams intensified to a pitch that brought nurses running from 3 rooms away. "No dogs," David told the startled volunteer firmly. "Never again." They brought Emma home 4 days later. The physical wounds were healing, but something else had broken inside their little girl. Emma, who had slept peacefully through thunderstorms and fireworks, now required every light in the house to be on. She woke 5, 6, 7 times each night, screaming from nightmares that left her trembling and inconsolable. Her favorite cartoon, Blue-Eye, about a family of animated dogs, sent her into hysterics. David had to pack away all her stuffed animals that even remotely resembled dogs. The neighbor's golden retriever, sweet old Bailey, who'd never done anything more aggressive than beg for treats, caused Emma to have a full panic attack when she heard him barking through the fence. Lynn reduced her hours at the accounting firm to care for Emma. David took family leave from his job as a software engineer. They were fortunate to have the flexibility, but watching their vibrant, curious daughter transform into a frightened, anxious shadow of herself was more painful than any financial burden could be. Dr. Priya Patel, a child psychologist specializing in trauma, explained it to them gently during their first session. Emma's brain is still developing. At 3 years old, she doesn't have the cognitive tools to process what happened. Her mind has categorized all dogs as dangerous predators. It's a survival mechanism, but it's going to require significant intervention to help her overcome it. How long? Lynn asked, desperate for a timeline, something concrete to hold on to. Dr. Patel's expression was compassionate but honest. Months, maybe years. Some children never fully recover from traumatic animal attacks. We'll do everything we can, but you need to prepare for a long journey. That night, David sat at his laptop and began researching attorneys. The image of Emma's terror-stricken face when she heard a dog bark was burned into his mind. This wasn't just about compensation for medical bills. That dog was still out there, still wearing a badge, still capable of hurting another child. He found Marcus Webb, a personal injury attorney known for taking on controversial cases and winning. Webb's first question during their phone consultation was direct. Do you want money, or do you want that dog put down? Both, David answered without hesitation. I want that animal to never hurt another child. Meanwhile, across town, Officer Jake Morrison was living his own nightmare. The department had placed him on administrative leave pending the outcome of the internal investigation. He'd been a police officer for 8 years, decorated twice for bravery, and now he sat at home in his empty apartment with nothing but his guilt for company. Rex had been moved to the police kennel facility. Jake was allowed to visit, but each time he saw his partner, the grief intensified. Rex didn't understand why their routine had changed, why they no longer went on patrol together, why Jake's eyes were always red and his voice thick with emotion. It wasn't your fault, boy, Jake would whisper through the chain-link fence, but the words felt hollow. He was Rex's handler. He was responsible for controlling the dog, for reading situations, for preventing exactly what had happened. The internal investigation was thorough and painful. Investigators reviewed every call Jake and Rex had responded to over 3 years. They interviewed witnesses, examined training records, consulted with K-9 experts. The preliminary findings were presented to Jake in a stark conference room at the station. Captain Sarah Reynolds laid out the facts with professional detachment. Rex has no prior incidents of aggression. His training records are exemplary. The situation at the apartment was chaotic, multiple people, shouting, broken glass, sudden movements. By all accounts, Rex was responding to what he perceived as a threat to you. But he bit a child, Jake said, his voice hollow. Yes, Captain Reynolds acknowledged. He did, and that's why we're convening a hearing. The outcome will determine whether Rex can return to duty with additional training, whether he should be retired or, she paused, her expression softening slightly, or whether he should be euthanized. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, the media had latched onto the story with the tenacity of a feeding frenzy. News vans camped outside the police station. Reporters ambushed Jake outside his apartment. The narrative was simple and damning. Dangerous police dog attacks innocent toddler. But there was another narrative building too. Rex's admirers, and there were many, began organizing. The families of the people Rex had helped rescue spoke to the media. Melissa Tran, whose 6-year-old son Rex had found hypothermic in the woods 2 winters ago, started a petition to save the dog's life. "Rex gave me my son back," she said on the local news, tears streaming down her face. "He's a hero, not a monster." The community fractured into camps. Outside the courthouse where the hearing would take place, 2 groups began gathering even before the official date. On one side, protesters held signs demanding justice for Emma and banned dangerous K9s. On the other side, supporters held signs reading "Save Rex" and "Heroes deserve second chances." Marcus Webb held a press conference on the courthouse steps, the Chen family standing behind him. Emma was mercifully absent, but the attorney held up an enlarged photo of her in the hospital bed, tubes and bandages covering her small body. "This is what a police dog did to a 3-year-old child," Webb declared, his voice booming across the crowd. "That animal is a loaded weapon that misfired. The Cedar Rapids Police Department has a responsibility to protect citizens, not endanger them. We are filing a lawsuit seeking damages and demanding that this dog be put down before it hurts another innocent child." The crowd erupted, some in support, others in angry opposition. Inside their home, David and Lynn watched the coverage with Emma sleeping between them, her small body twitching with dreams they knew were nightmares. Their daughter whimpered in her sleep, and Lynn pulled her closer. "We're doing the right thing," David said, though he wasn't sure if he was trying to convince his wife or himself. Lynn nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed on Emma's face, searching for any sign of the fearless little girl who used to laugh at everything. That girl felt lost, possibly forever. Judge Margaret Foster had presided over the Johnson County Courthouse for 17 years. She'd sentenced murderers, mediated bitter custody disputes, and ruled on cases that made national headlines. But as she reviewed the file for Chen v. Cedar Rapids Police Department and K9 Rex, she realized she'd never encountered anything quite like this. The courtroom was packed on the morning of September 15th. Every seat was filled, with overflow spectators standing along the walls. Security had been doubled after online threats from both sides of the debate. News crews lined the hallway outside, their cameras ready to capture every moment of what had already been dubbed the trial of the century by local media. Though technically, it was just a hearing to determine the dog's fate. Judge Foster gavelled the room to order, her steel-gray eyes sweeping across the crowd. "This proceeding will be conducted with decorum and respect," she announced firmly. "Any outbursts will result in immediate removal from my courtroom. Is that understood?" A murmur of assent rippled through the crowd. Marcus Webb rose first, his 6'4" frame commanding attention. He was known for his theatrical courtroom style, and today was no exception. "Your Honor, we're here because a weapon failed. Not a gun, not a taser, but a weapon nonetheless. A police dog trained to bite, to attack, to use force. And when that weapon was deployed in a civilian setting, it did exactly what it was designed to do. It attacked." He clicked a remote, and the large screen beside him illuminated with Emma's hospital photos. The courtroom gasped collectively. Emma lay unconscious, intubated, her small body dwarfed by medical equipment. Her shoulder was a mass of bandages, with blood seeping through in dark patches. Lynn Chen, sitting in the front row, covered her mouth to stifle a sob. David's jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. Webb continued, his voice rising with emotion. "Emma Chen was 3 years old. She weighed 32 pounds. She saw what she thought was a friendly dog and reached out her hand in innocent greeting. For that crime, the crime of being a curious child, she received 23 stitches, underwent 2 hours of surgery, and now suffers from severe post-traumatic stress disorder." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the courtroom. The defense will tell you about Rex's service record. They'll show you commendations and news clippings. But Your Honor, we're not here to debate whether this dog has done good things. We're here because on July 23rd, this dog became a clear and present danger to public safety, a danger that must be eliminated before another child suffers. The Rex supporters in the gallery shifted uncomfortably, several shaking their heads. Judge Foster's sharp look silenced any verbal protests. Amanda Chen, the defense attorney representing both Officer Morrison and Rex, stood slowly. She was a petite woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a reputation for meticulous preparation. Your Honor, may I approach? At the judge's nod, she walked to the evidence table and picked up a thick binder. This is Rex's complete service record. 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days of active duty. In that time, Rex has been deployed 847 times. He has apprehended 12 suspects, all of whom were armed and dangerous. He has located 3 missing persons, including 6-year-old Tommy Brennan, who would have died from hypothermia if Rex hadn't found him. She opened the binder showing photographs. This is Rex at a school assembly, where he demonstrated police work to 300 elementary students. This is Rex visiting patients at Mercy Medical Center, ironically, the same hospital where Emma Chen was treated. This is Rex at a community 4th of July event, where hundreds of people, including dozens of children, interacted with him without incident. Amanda's voice grew firmer. In 847 deployments, Rex has never shown unprovoked aggression. Not once. The incident with Emma Chen occurred during an extremely chaotic domestic disturbance involving alcohol, violence, broken glass, multiple people moving unpredictably, and inadequate crowd control. Rex was doing his job, protecting his handler in what he perceived as a threatening situation. Marcus Webb shot to his feet. Objection. Ms. Chen is characterizing a 3-year-old child as a threat. I'm characterizing the entire situation as threatening, Amanda countered. Rex didn't target Emma specifically. He reacted to sudden movement in his peripheral vision while already in a heightened state of alert. That's not aggression. That's instinct gone wrong in a perfect storm of circumstances. Judge Foster raised her hand for silence. I'll allow the characterization, but Ms. Chen, be very careful with your language regarding the child. Of course, Your Honor. Amanda returned to her table and picked up another document. We've retained Dr. Sarah Williams, one of the nation's leading animal behaviorists. She's conducted preliminary assessments of Rex and has concluded that he shows no signs of inherent aggression or instability. However, she's indicated that a full evaluation would require controlled testing that she cannot perform in a kennel environment. This caught Judge Foster's attention. What kind of testing? Stress scenarios, public interaction simulations, temperament assessments under various conditions, Amanda explained. Dr. Williams has offered to conduct a comprehensive evaluation, but she would need access to appropriate facilities and potentially to have Rex brought into environments similar to where he would work if returned to duty. Marcus Webb laughed incredulously. Your Honor, the defense wants to parade this dangerous animal around the community as if nothing happened. No, Judge Foster said thoughtfully, an idea forming in her mind. But I am interested in hearing from Dr. Williams directly. 2 days later, Dr. Sarah Williams took the stand. She was a woman in her early 50s with short silver hair and an air of quiet authority. Her credentials were impeccable: Ph.D. in animal behavior from Cornell, author of 3 books on canine psychology, consultant to police departments across the country. Dr. Williams, Judge Foster began, you've reviewed the case file and conducted preliminary assessments of Rex. What are your findings? Dr. Williams adjusted her glasses. Your Honor, Rex is an exceptionally well-trained dog with a stable temperament. The incident with Emma Chen was, in my professional opinion, a tragic confluence of environmental factors rather than an indication of inherent viciousness. "Can you be certain he won't attack again?" the judge asked. "With absolute certainty. No," Dr. Williams admitted honestly. "Just as we cannot say with absolute certainty that any dog, or any person, for that matter, will never act violently under extreme circumstances. However, I can say that Rex's behavioral profile suggests an extremely low risk of future incidents, provided he's handled appropriately." Marcus Webb stood for cross-examination. "Dr. Williams, you said you've conducted preliminary assessments. What does that mean?" "I've observed Rex in his kennel environment, reviewed his training records and deployment history, and conducted basic behavioral tests," she replied. "But you haven't tested him around children since the attack, have you?" "No, I haven't. So you can't actually tell us how Rex would react if another child approached him unexpectedly?" Dr. Williams paused, "Not with complete certainty, no." Webb pressed his advantage. "In fact, isn't it true that traumatic incidents can change an animal's behavior, that Rex might now associate children with the chaos and stress of that day?" "It's possible," Dr. Williams conceded, "which is why I believe a more comprehensive evaluation is necessary." Judge Foster leaned forward. "Dr. Williams, what would a comprehensive evaluation entail?" The courtroom fell silent as Dr. Williams took a deep breath. "Your Honor, the only way to truly assess Rex's behavioral state would be to conduct controlled exposure therapy, to test his reactions in progressively challenging scenarios, including—" She paused, knowing what she was about to say would create an uproar, "including controlled interaction with children." The courtroom erupted. David Chen shouted, "Absolutely not." Lynn grabbed his arm as reporters frantically typed on their phones. Judge Foster's gavel came down repeatedly. But Dr. Williams wasn't finished. She raised her voice over the chaos. "However, there's one other element that would provide invaluable data, an element that could definitively answer the question of Rex's current behavioral state." Judge Foster finally achieved silence. "What element?" Dr. Williams looked directly at the Chen family. "Controlled interaction with Emma Chen herself." The shock was absolute. For 3 full seconds, no one in the courtroom breathed. Then Lin Chen's voice, sharp as broken glass, cut through the silence. "You want to put my daughter in a room with the dog that attacked her? Are you insane?" Dr. Williams remained calm. "Mrs. Chen, I understand your reaction, but consider this. Emma is traumatized. She's afraid of all dogs now, correct?" Lynn's eyes filled with tears. "She can't even watch cartoons. She has nightmares every night." "Exactly," Dr. Williams said gently. "And traditional therapy for childhood trauma of this nature often includes controlled exposure to the fear stimulus. Not immediately, not without extensive preparation, but eventually. Studies show that children who overcome their trauma through guided exposure have significantly better long-term outcomes than those who simply avoid the trigger for life." Dr. Patel, Emma's psychologist, was sitting in the gallery. She stood suddenly. "Your Honor, may I speak?" Judge Foster looked surprised but nodded. "Approach." Dr. Patel came to the front of the courtroom. "I'm Dr. Priya Patel, Emma's treating psychologist. I've been working with her since the incident." She turned to the Chens. "David, Lynn, I know this sounds frightening, but Dr. Williams isn't wrong. Emma's progress has plateaued. She's stuck in her trauma. We've been doing play therapy, art therapy, gradual desensitization with pictures and sounds, but she's not improving. Controlled exposure therapy done correctly could be the breakthrough she needs." David stood, his face flushed with anger. "You want to use my daughter as a guinea pig to see if this dog is safe, to help the police department avoid liability?" "No," Judge Foster interjected firmly. "If such therapy were to occur, it would be solely for Emma's benefit. The evaluation of Rex would be secondary." She looked at both families. The Chens, devastated and protective, and Officer Morrison, who sat with his head in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Here's my ruling," Judge Foster announced. "I'm ordering a 2-week recess. During that time, the Chen family will consult with Dr. Patel and Dr. Williams about the possibility of controlled exposure therapy. If and only if they agree, and if Dr. Patel believes it would benefit Emma's recovery, we will proceed with a structured therapy program. Emma's welfare is the priority. Rex's evaluation is secondary. Is that clear?" Marcus Webb protested, but Judge Foster cut him off. "Mr. Webb, your clients want justice and healing for their daughter. This might provide both. 2 weeks. Then we reconvene." The gavel fell, and the courtroom exploded into heated discussion. The Chens sat frozen, facing an impossible decision that could determine not just a dog's fate, but their daughter's future. The Chen family's kitchen table had become a war room of emotions. Empty coffee cups littered the surface alongside medical journals, psychology articles, and legal documents. It was 3 in the morning, and none of them could sleep. David paced the kitchen floor, his footsteps worn into an invisible track on the tile. "I can't believe we're even considering this. Our daughter was nearly killed by that dog, and now they want us to put her in a room with him again. It's insane." Lynn sat with her head in her hands, her long black hair falling forward like a curtain. She'd been reading the same trauma recovery study for the past hour, the words blurring together. "The research says." "I don't care what the research says." David's voice rose, then immediately dropped as he remembered Emma sleeping upstairs. He continued in a harsh whisper. "She's 3 years old, Lynn. 3. She should be worried about which princess dress to wear, not facing the animal that gave her nightmares." Mrs. Chen, Emma's grandmother, sat quietly in the corner. She'd been mostly silent since the hearing, carrying the weight of guilt like a physical burden. Finally, she spoke in Mandarin, her voice soft but firm. "I watch her every day. You both work even now with reduced hours. I see things you might miss." David turned to his mother. "What things?" "She looks out the window," Mrs. Chen said. "When dogs walk by with their owners, at first, yes, she hides. She runs to me trembling, but then—" The older woman's eyes grew distant. "Then she peeks out from behind the curtain, and there's something in her eyes, not just fear." "What else could it be?" Lynn asked, desperate for understanding. "Longing," Mrs. Chen said simply. "Before the attack, Emma loved animals. She begged for a puppy every single day. That love didn't just disappear, it's trapped under the fear like a bird in a cage. Maybe the only way to free it is to face what locked it away." David slumped into a chair, exhausted. And what if facing it makes it worse? What if she has a complete breakdown? What if seeing Rex again traumatizes her even more? The questions hung in the air, unanswerable. The next morning, Dr. Patel arrived at their home for an emergency consultation. She spread out a detailed plan on the dining room table, her professional demeanor a calm anchor in their storm of anxiety. "I want to be completely transparent with you," Dr. Patel began. "Exposure therapy is not without risks. Done incorrectly, it can indeed worsen trauma. But done correctly, with appropriate safeguards and at Emma's pace, it has a 73% success rate in childhood animal attack cases." "And the other 27%?" David asked sharply. Dr. Patel met his eyes directly. "Show minimal improvement or, in rare cases, increased anxiety. But here's what you need to understand. Emma is already in that 27% with current treatment. She's not getting better. After 3 months of traditional therapy, her fear responses have actually intensified. She's generalizing her fear to all animals now. She screamed at a butterfly yesterday at preschool." Lynn's head snapped up. "The teacher didn't mention that." "She called me," Dr. Patel said gently. "She's worried. Emma is isolating herself from other children because they talk about their pets. She won't participate in activities that involve animal pictures or sounds. She's shrinking her world to avoid her fear, and that pattern will only worsen as she gets older." David felt his resolve wavering. What would the therapy actually involve? Dr. Patel pulled out a detailed protocol. 5 sessions, possibly more if needed, each no longer than 30 minutes. We start with Rex behind a barrier, thick glass, at least 20 feet away. Emma doesn't have to look at him. She can sit with you, play with toys, completely ignore his presence. The goal of session 1 is simply for Emma to be in the same large room without having a panic attack. And if she does panic, Lynn asked. We stop immediately. Emma has complete control. If she says no more, we're done. No pressure, no coercion. Dr. Patel flipped to the next page. Session 2, if she tolerates session 1, we reduce the distance slightly. Maybe 18 feet instead of 20. We introduce controlled activities, Rex performing basic commands so Emma can see he's not a wild, unpredictable animal but one that responds to human direction. You're asking her to watch the dog that attacked her perform tricks. David's voice dripped with incredulity. I'm asking her to learn that dogs can be controlled, that they follow rules, that they're not random monsters, Dr. Patel corrected. Right now, in Emma's mind, all dogs are unpredictable threats. Seeing Rex respond calmly to commands challenges that belief. Mrs. Chen leaned forward. What about the later sessions? Only if Emma progresses well, Dr. Patel emphasized. We might eventually remove the glass barrier but maintain distance. We might have Rex lie down, showing submissive body language. The final session, which we might never reach and that's okay, would involve Emma having the option to approach Rex if she chooses. Not being forced but having the choice, reclaiming her power in the situation. Lynn wiped tears from her eyes. Dr. Williams said something about this helping Rex's evaluation too. I don't want our daughter used as a test subject for a dog's trial. That's why Judge Foster was so clear, Dr. Patel assured her. This therapy happens only if it's in Emma's best interest. The court evaluation is completely secondary. If at any point the therapy benefits Rex's case but harms Emma's recovery, we stop. Her well-being is the only priority. The room fell silent as the weight of the decision pressed down on them. That evening they did something they'd been avoiding. They asked Emma. They sat with her in her bedroom, surrounded by her nightlights and the stuffed animals that didn't look like dogs. Lynn held her daughter on her lap while David knelt beside them. Emma, sweetie, Lynn began carefully. Do you remember the big dog from before, the one that hurt you? Emma's whole body tensed. She nodded, her thumb moving toward her mouth, a comfort behavior she'd outgrown before the attack but had returned to since. The doctor thinks maybe it would help you feel less scared if you could see the dog again, David said, his voice gentle. But from very, very far away, with Mommy and Daddy holding you. And if you don't want to, you never have to. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice so small they almost missed it, she asked, Will the doggy hurt me again? Lynn's tears fell freely. No, baby, there will be a big glass wall between you. The dog can't reach you. You'll be completely safe. Does the doggy know he was bad? Emma asked, her child's logic seeking justice in simple terms. David struggled with how to answer. The doggy was confused and made a mistake, but he's not a bad dog, he helps people too. Emma's fingers twisted in her mother's shirt. I used to want a puppy. I know, sweetheart, Lynn whispered. You asked us every single day. I'm scared of puppies now, Emma said, and the simple honesty of it broke both her parents' hearts. That's why the doctor thinks seeing the dog might help, David explained. So maybe one day you won't be so scared anymore. Emma thought about this with the serious concentration only a 3-year-old can manage. Finally, she looked up at her mother. You'll hold me tight. So tight, Lynn promised. And Daddy too. Daddy too, David confirmed, his voice thick. Okay, Emma whispered, I'll try. Those 2 words, I'll try, changed everything. The next day, Lynn called Marcus Webb, their attorney. His response was explosive. Absolutely not. This is exactly what the police department wants. They'll use your daughter to make that dog look safe, and then they'll put him back on the streets. This isn't about the lawsuit, Lynn said firmly. This is about Emma's recovery. Mrs. Chen, I strongly advise against this, Webb insisted. It could compromise our entire case, and frankly, it's dangerous. Emma agreed to try, Lynn said, and Dr. Patel believes it could help her. There was a long pause. Then Webb's voice softened slightly. If you do this, I need it documented that this is purely therapeutic, not part of Rex's evaluation. And I want liability waivers signed by everyone involved. If that dog so much as growls near your daughter, the lawsuit becomes criminal charges. Agreed, Lynn said. She hung up and looked at David. We're really doing this. David pulled her into his arms. We're trusting the professionals, we're trusting our daughter, and we're praying this works. Across town, Officer Jake Morrison received the call from Amanda Chen, his attorney. The family agreed to the therapy sessions. You need to prepare Rex. Jake's knees went weak with relief and terror. When? First session is scheduled for next Monday. Jake, this is Rex's only chance. If Emma has a bad reaction, if anything goes wrong, the judge will order him euthanized. You understand that? I understand, Jake said hoarsely. He drove to the kennel facility immediately. Rex's tail wagged when he saw Jake approach, the dog's eternal optimism somehow intact despite weeks of confinement. Jake knelt by the chain-link fence, his forehead pressed against the metal. Hey, buddy, you're getting a chance. A little girl is going to be very brave for you, the same little girl you hurt. His voice broke. You need to be the best dog you've ever been. Can you do that for me? Rex tilted his head, brown eyes trusting and confused. I need you to be gentle, Jake whispered. I need you to be calm. I need you to show everyone the dog I know you are. Because if you can't, buddy, I'll lose you forever. He sat there for an hour, telling Rex about Emma, about the therapy, about what was at stake. The dog listened intently, as if he understood every word. Maybe somehow he did. The impossible choice had been made. Now came the even more impossible task, facing the trauma head-on. In 5 days, a 3-year-old girl and a police dog would meet again. Everyone was holding their breath. The Cedar Rapids Therapeutic Center felt deliberately peaceful. Soft earth tones decorated the walls, natural light streamed through large windows, and the air carried a faint scent of lavender. It was designed to be calming, non-threatening, a sanctuary for healing. Today, it would host an unprecedented encounter. Dr. Patel arrived early, reviewing her notes one final time. She'd conducted hundreds of exposure therapy sessions, but never one with such high stakes. In the waiting room, she could hear Emma's voice. The little girl was asking her mother about the goldfish in the aquarium, her tone curious but edged with anxiety. Dr. Williams was already in the therapy room making final adjustments. The space was large, nearly 40 feet across. On one end, comfortable chairs and a play area with toys had been arranged. On the other end, separated by a floor-to-ceiling transparent barrier of reinforced glass, was a simple mat and a chair. The barrier was strong enough to contain a grizzly bear, certainly enough for a German shepherd. Everything's ready, Dr. Williams said, though her own tension was visible in the tight set of her shoulders. Rex and Officer Morrison are in the adjacent room. We'll bring them in through the separate entrance once Emma is settled. Amanda Chen, the defense attorney, sat in the observation room with Marcus Webb. The two lawyers had agreed to witness the session remotely via camera, ensuring no one's presence would affect the outcome. Judge Foster had declined to watch live, preferring to review recordings later without the pressure of real-time observation. At 9 o'clock precisely, the Chen family entered the therapy room. Emma looked impossibly small in her pink overalls and white sneakers. She clutched Mr. Hoppers, her stuffed rabbit, against her chest with her left hand. Her right arm, where the scars from the attack were still visible beneath her short sleeve, stayed close to her mother's leg. Her eyes were wide, darting around the room, searching for threats. "Good morning, Emma," Dr. Patel said warmly, kneeling to the child's eye level. "Do you remember me?" Emma nodded shyly. "This is the room I told you about. See all these toys? You can play with any of them you like, and Mommy and Daddy will be right here with you the whole time." Emma's gaze fixed on the glass barrier. "Where's the doggy?" "He's not here yet," Dr. Patel explained gently. "We're going to get you comfortable first. Would you like to explore the toys?" Lynn guided Emma to the play area, her own heart hammering. David stood nearby, his posture protective, ready to snatch his daughter away at the first sign of distress. They dressed in comfortable clothes, prepared to sit on the floor to hold Emma, to do whatever she needed. For 15 minutes they simply played. Dr. Patel had carefully selected toys that would engage Emma, building blocks, a dollhouse, art supplies. Slowly, incrementally, Emma's shoulders began to relax. She built a small tower of blocks. She colored a picture of a rainbow. Then Dr. Patel spoke quietly. "Emma, we're going to bring the dog in now. Remember, he'll be on the other side of the glass, very far away. He can't reach you. You're completely safe. If you want him to leave at any time, you just tell me stop, and we'll make him leave immediately. Do you understand?" Emma's hands froze on her crayons. She looked at her mother with terrified eyes. "I'm right here, baby," Lynn whispered, pulling Emma onto her lap. "Daddy's here too. We've got you." David moved closer, wrapping his arms around both of them. "We're a fortress," he told Emma, using their favorite game. "Nothing can get through our fortress." Emma nodded, burying her face in her mother's neck. Dr. Patel signaled to Dr. Williams. In the adjacent room, Jake Morrison took a deep breath. He'd barely slept in days, running through training exercises with Rex constantly. The dog needed to be perfect, calm, controlled, responsive. Everything depended on it. "Ready, boy," Jake whispered. Rex's tail wagged slightly. He'd been bathed and groomed, his coat gleaming. To anyone else, he looked like a magnificent, well-trained police dog. To Jake, he looked like a friend on trial for his life. The door opened, and they entered through the separate entrance. The moment Emma heard the door, she screamed. It was a sound of pure terror, high-pitched and primal. Her entire body went rigid in her mother's arms, her fingers clawing at Lynn's shirt. "No, no, no." "It's okay, Emma, I've got you," Lynn said, her own voice shaking. She looked desperately at Dr. Patel. "Should we stop?" Dr. Patel held up a hand. "Give her a moment. Emma, look at Mommy. Look at me, sweetheart, you're safe. The glass is between you and the dog. He's very, very far away." On the other side of the barrier, Rex had entered with Officer Morrison. The dog immediately sat at Jake's command, his posture perfect. But his ears were alert, swiveling toward the sound of Emma's cries. Jake kept his hand on Rex's collar, a gentle reminder to stay calm. The distance between them was 23 feet, 20 feet of room plus the thickness of the barrier. It might as well have been miles. Emma's screams subsided into terrified whimpers. Her face remained buried against her mother, but her crying had quieted enough that Dr. Patel could speak. "Emma, you don't have to look at the dog. You can stay right there with Mommy and Daddy. We're just going to sit here quietly for a little while. The dog is going to sit quietly too. Nothing scary is going to happen." Minutes ticked by, 5, then 10. Emma's breathing gradually slowed from panicked gasps to shuddering breaths. Lynn rocked her gently, humming a lullaby she'd sung since Emma was a baby. David kept his eyes on Rex, watching for any sign of aggression, any hint that the dog might lunge or bark. But Rex remained motionless, sitting calmly beside Officer Morrison. The dog's eyes were soft, his mouth closed, his body language completely non-threatening. "Emma," Dr. Patel said softly, "I want you to know something. The dog hasn't moved at all. He's just sitting there, very still, very quiet. He's not trying to hurt anyone. Would you like to take just one peek?" "No," Emma whimpered. That's okay, Dr. Patel assured her. You don't have to. More minutes passed, 15 total now. Emma's grip on her mother gradually loosened from desperate to merely tight. Then so quietly they almost missed it, Emma spoke. Is he really far away? Lynn's heart leaped. Very far away, baby, and there's a big strong wall between you. Like the fortress. Even stronger than the fortress, David confirmed. Another minute passed. Then Emma slowly, incrementally turned her head, just slightly, just enough that one eye peeked out from her mother's shoulder. She looked. Across the room, behind the glass barrier, Rex sat perfectly still. Officer Morrison hadn't moved either, understanding instinctively that any motion might startle the child. Man and dog were like statues. Emma looked for maybe 3 seconds before hiding her face again. But it was 3 seconds of courage that made everyone in the room exhale with relief. You were very brave, Dr. Patel said gently. That was wonderful, Emma. They sat in silence for the remaining minutes of the 30-minute session. Emma peeked out 2 more times, each glance lasting slightly longer. She didn't smile, she didn't relax, but she looked. When Dr. Patel finally said, "Okay, we're all done for today," Emma sagged against her mother with exhaustion. The emotional toll of those 30 minutes had drained her completely. Dr. Williams signaled to Officer Morrison. Jake gave Rex the command to heal, and they quietly exited through the separate door. The moment they were gone, Emma's whole body relaxed. You did it, sweetheart, Lynn said, tears streaming down her face. You were so brave. Can we go home now? Emma asked in a tiny voice. Yes, baby, we can go home. In the observation room, Marcus Webb sat back heavily. She was terrified, absolutely terrified. But she looked, Amanda Chen noted quietly. 3 times she looked, that's progress. Or torture, Webb shot back. In the other room, Dr. Patel was making notes. Dr. Williams joined her, and they conferred in low voices. Assessment, Dr. Williams asked. Severe fear response initially, but it decreased over the session duration, Dr. Patel said. She was able to make visual contact 3 times despite extreme anxiety. I'd call it a qualified success for session 1. Rex's behavior. Perfect, absolutely perfect. No reaction to her screaming, no signs of stress or aggression. He's exceptionally well trained. Do we continue? Dr. Williams asked. Dr. Patel looked through the one-way glass at Emma, who was now drinking juice that Lynn had brought, her hands still trembling slightly. That's the Chen family's decision, but from a therapeutic standpoint, yes, I think we should continue. That evening, the Chens sat together on Emma's bed. She'd refused to leave their sight since returning home, even insisting on bringing her toys into the bathroom while Lynn showered. Do you have to go back? Emma asked quietly. Lynn exchanged glances with David. The doctor thinks it might help you feel less scared, but only if you want to, baby. We'll never make you do something you don't want to do. Emma was quiet for a long time, picking at Mr. Hopper's ear, a nervous habit. Finally, she asked, "Did the doggy try to hurt me today?" No, sweetheart, David said honestly. He just sat there very quietly. Oh, Emma processed this. Can I go back? But next time can I bring Mr. Hopper's in my purple blanket? Lynn's eyes filled with tears. Of course you can, baby. You can bring anything that makes you feel safe. Okay, Emma whispered, I'll try again. Dr. Patel received the call that evening. The Chens had agreed to session 2. Officer Morrison also got the news. He drove to the kennel and sat with Rex, telling the dog about the brave little girl who'd looked at him 3 times despite being terrified. She's giving you a chance, buddy, Jake said, his voice thick with emotion. She's 3 years old and she's braver than most adults I know. We can't let her down. Rex rested his head on Jake's knee, and Jake stroked the dog's soft ears. Session 2 was scheduled for 3 days later. The fragile bridge between trauma and healing had been built. Now came the terrifying task of crossing it. Session 2 began disastrously. Emma entered the therapy room clinging to her purple blanket, Mr. Hoppers tucked under one arm, but the moment Dr. Patel mentioned bringing Rex in, the little girl had a complete meltdown. Not just crying, a full-blown panic attack. Her breathing became rapid and shallow, her lips turning pale. Her eyes rolled back, and her small body began to shake uncontrollably. Emma, look at me." Lynn's voice was sharp with panic as she held her daughter. "David, she can't breathe." Dr. Patel moved swiftly, kneeling beside them. "Emma, we're going to count together. 1, 2, 3. She guided Lynn through calming techniques while David frantically rubbed Emma's back. In the adjacent room, Officer Morrison heard the commotion through the door. He looked down at Rex, his heart sinking. "We're not even going in, buddy. It's over." The panic attack lasted 8 agonizing minutes. When Emma finally calmed enough to breathe normally, she was pale and exhausted, curled in her mother's lap like an infant. Dr. Patel made the decision immediately. "We're done for today. No exposure. Emma needs to go home and rest." The session had lasted exactly 10 minutes. In the observation room, Marcus Webb stood triumphantly. "That's it. This experiment is over. You saw what it did to her. I'm filing a motion to stop this immediately and demanding the court proceed with Rex's euthanization." Amanda Chen said nothing, but her face was grave. The media got wind of the failed session within hours. Headlines screamed, "Trauma therapy goes wrong and dog attack victim suffers panic attack in court-ordered treatment." Protesters outside the courthouse intensified their demands. The Justice for Emma movement gained thousands of new followers. That night the Chen household was silent and heavy. Emma wouldn't let Lynn put her down, not even to sleep. She clung to her mother with desperate strength, whimpering whenever Lynn tried to shift positions. David sat beside them on the couch, feeling utterly helpless. "We're stopping this," he said firmly. "I don't care what the doctors say. We're not putting her through this again." Lynn nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I know. I'll call Dr. Patel in the morning." But before they could make that call, Dr. Patel arrived at their door at 8 a.m., accompanied by Dr. Williams. "I know what you're going to say," Dr. Patel began as they sat in the living room. "And I understand. Yesterday was traumatic, but I need you to hear me out before you make your final decision." David's jaw was set. "There's nothing to hear out. You saw what happened to her." "I did," Dr. Patel agreed. "And I spent all night reviewing the recording and consulting with colleagues. What Emma experienced was a fear response, yes, but it wasn't caused by Rex." Lynn looked up sharply. "What do you mean? Of course it was caused by Rex." Dr. Williams opened her laptop, turning it so the Chens could see the screen. "Watch this. This is from the moment before Emma's panic attack began." The video played. Emma was sitting with her parents, holding her blanket. She looked nervous but relatively calm. Then Dr. Patel's voice came through the speakers. "Emma, we're going to bring the dog in now." "Wait," Dr. Williams said, pausing the video. "Look at Emma's face right here. What do you see?" Lynn studied the frozen image. "She's scared." "Yes, but not panicked yet. Now watch." Dr. Williams pressed play. On screen, a noise occurred, the sound of the door opening in the adjacent room. But it wasn't the door opening that triggered Emma's panic. It was the jingling sound of Rex's collar and leash, combined with the heavy footsteps of Officer Morrison's boots on the hard floor. "The auditory trigger," Dr. Patel explained gently. "Emma's trauma isn't just visual, it's also deeply connected to the sounds of that day. The jingling tags, the heavy footsteps, the door opening suddenly. Those sounds recreated the sensory memory of the attack." David frowned. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying we approached this wrong," Dr. Patel admitted. "We focused on visual exposure but didn't account for auditory triggers. But here's the important part. This actually gives us valuable information. If we can help Emma process the sounds in a controlled way, we can address the trauma more completely. Absolutely not, David said, standing. No more experiments with my daughter. David, wait. Lynn's voice was quiet but firm. She was still watching the video, which had continued playing. On screen, after Emma's panic attack subsided and they'd decided to end the session, something else had happened. Something Lynn hadn't noticed in the moment because she'd been so focused on comforting Emma. Look, Lynn said, pointing to the screen. The video showed the moments after Dr. Patel had announced they were done. In the background, through the glass barrier, Rex could be seen exiting with Officer Morrison. But just before they left, Rex had turned back, looking toward where Emma sat with her parents. The dog's posture was gentle, his ears down, his tail low. He made a soft sound, not a bark or growl, but something closer to a whine, a sound of concern. Then Officer Morrison had gently led him away. He was worried about her, Mrs. Chen said softly from the doorway. No one had noticed Emma's grandmother enter the room. The dog was worried about the child. Dr. Williams nodded. Dogs are incredibly empathetic animals. Rex responded to Emma's distress with concern, not aggression. That's significant. It doesn't matter, David insisted. We're not putting Emma through this again. What if we tried something different? Dr. Patel proposed. What if session 3 doesn't involve Rex at all? What if we work just on the sounds? I can bring in recordings, collar jingles, footsteps, doors opening. We can help Emma process those triggers in a safe environment where there's no dog present. Baby steps. Lynn looked at her husband. If there's no dog there, it might be less scary. And what's the point? David challenged. So she can eventually face Rex again. Why? So the police department can keep their dog. No, Dr. Patel said firmly. So Emma can go to the pet store without having a panic attack. So she can visit her cousin who just got a puppy. So she can walk down the street without being terrified every time she hears a collar jingle. This isn't about Rex anymore, David. It's about giving Emma her life back. The words hung in the air. That afternoon, Lynn went upstairs to find Emma playing quietly with her dolls. She'd overheard the adults talking. Children always did. Mommy, am I broken? Emma asked, looking up with those huge, innocent eyes. Lynn's heart shattered. Oh, baby, no. No, you're not broken. You're scared, and that's okay. Being scared doesn't mean you're broken. The doggy made me scared. Yes, he did, but you know what? You're the bravest person I know. Emma looked doubtful. Brave people aren't scared. That's not true, sweetheart. Brave people are scared, but they try anyway. Like when you looked at the dog last time, even though you were afraid. That was so brave. Emma considered this. If I do the sound thing with no doggy there, will it help me be not scared anymore? It might, Lynn said honestly. We can try, and if it's too scary, we stop just like always. Emma picked up Mr. Hoppers, whispering something into the stuffed rabbit's ear. Then she looked at her mother. Mr. Hoppers says we should try. Lynn smiled through her tears. Mr. Hoppers is very wise. Session 3 was scheduled, but with a completely different approach. No Rex, no Officer Morrison, just Emma, her parents, Dr. Patel, and a carefully curated set of recorded sounds. The therapy room felt less threatening without the glass barrier and the knowledge that a dog waited nearby. Emma sat on a soft mat with her parents, surrounded by her comfort items. We're going to play a game today, Dr. Patel explained. I'm going to play some sounds and you're going to tell me how they make you feel. If any sound is too scary, you tell me stop and I'll turn it off immediately. Okay. Emma nodded, gripping her mother's hand. Dr. Patel started with neutral sounds, birds chirping, water running, soft music. Emma relaxed slightly. Then she introduced sounds that were closer to the trauma, footsteps in a hallway. Emma tensed but didn't panic. How do you feel? Dr. Patel asked. Scared, Emma admitted, but just a little. That's okay. A little scared is manageable. You're doing great. They progressed slowly, door opening. Emma's breathing quickened, but she squeezed her mother's hand and stayed present. A man's voice saying gentle commands, sit, stay, good boy. Emma's eyes widened, but she didn't look away from her mother's face. Then came the hardest sound, the jingle of dog tags. Emma's whole body went rigid. Her breathing accelerated. But this time, instead of spiraling into panic, she used the techniques Dr. Patel had taught her. She counted with her mother. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She focused on her father's hand on her back, warm and steady. The jingling stopped after 10 seconds. You did it, Dr. Patel said with genuine pride. Emma, you stayed calm even when you heard the scary sound. That was incredibly brave. Emma looked stunned by her own accomplishment. I did. You absolutely did. For the first time in weeks, a tiny smile flickered across Emma's face. The session lasted 25 minutes, and Emma remained in control the entire time. When they left, she was tired but not traumatized. That night, she slept in her own bed for the first time since the failed second session. Dr. Patel called Officer Morrison that evening. I think we're ready to try again. Session 4. Rex present, but we're implementing new protocols. Jake's voice was cautious. What kind of protocols? Rex needs to be completely silent. No collar tags. Use a flat collar with no metal. You'll wear soft-soled shoes instead of boots. You'll enter slowly, and Rex will lie down immediately, showing submissive body language. We're removing all the auditory triggers. We can do that, Jake said, hope creeping into his voice. There's one more thing, Dr. Patel added. I want you to talk to Rex where Emma can hear you. Let her hear you giving him gentle commands, praising him. Let her understand that he's not a monster. He's an animal who responds to kindness and control. Session 4 was scheduled for 2 days later. This time, everyone felt cautiously optimistic. Emma had broken through one barrier. Now came the true test, facing Rex again, but on new terms. 6 weeks of therapy had led to this moment. Judge Margaret Foster's courtroom was packed beyond capacity, with people standing shoulder to shoulder along the walls. Security had tripled, metal detectors at every entrance. The air hummed with tension and anticipation. Session 4 had been remarkable. Emma had tolerated Rex's presence for 20 minutes without panic. Session 5 saw her asking questions. Why does he sit when you say sit? By Session 6, Emma had watched Rex perform his entire training routine, her curiosity slowly overpowering her fear. Session 7 had been the breakthrough. Emma had smiled, actually smiled, when Rex gently retrieved a soft toy and brought it back to Officer Morrison. But Dr. Patel had been clear with Judge Foster. Progress in a controlled therapy environment didn't guarantee Emma was healed. The final test needed to be more challenging, more real. The judge had made an unprecedented decision. The evaluation would happen in her courtroom. Now, on this October morning, that moment had arrived. Emma wore her favorite purple dress with white flowers, her hair in 2 neat braids. She held Mr. Hopper's in one hand and her mother's hand in the other. David walked beside them, his face pale but determined. The gallery was absolutely silent as the Chen family entered. Every eye tracked the small girl walking down the center aisle. Reporters held their pens frozen above their notebooks. Camera operators in the designated press area barely breathed, knowing that any sound might disrupt what was about to unfold. Judge Foster's expression was gentle as Emma approached. Good morning, Emma. Do you remember me? Emma nodded shyly, then whispered, You're the judge lady. A ripple of soft laughter eased some of the tension. Judge Foster smiled. That's right. Emma, I want to explain what's going to happen today. Is that okay? Another nod. A dog is going to come into this room. His name is Rex. He's going to sit quietly with his friend, Officer Morrison, on the other side of the room. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You can sit with your mommy and daddy. You can play with your rabbit, or, if you feel safe enough, you can walk closer to Rex. But that's completely your choice. Nobody will make you do anything. Do you understand?" "Yes," Emma said, her voice small but clear. "And if at any point you want Rex to leave, you just say stop and he'll leave immediately. You have all the power here, Emma. You're in charge." The judge's words were carefully chosen, designed to give Emma a sense of control that had been stripped from her during the attack. Lynn and David guided Emma to chairs positioned in the center of the courtroom. Dr. Patel sat nearby, ready to intervene if needed. Dr. Williams sat in the gallery, her professional assessment tablet on her lap. Judge Foster looked toward the side entrance. "Bring in the dog." The courtroom held its collective breath. The door opened slowly. Officer Jake Morrison entered first, his footsteps deliberately soft on the courtroom floor. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, and a button-down shirt to appear less official, less threatening. And beside him, on a simple flat collar with no jingling tags, walked Rex. Emma's hand tightened on her mother's, but she didn't scream. She didn't hide. She watched. Rex was magnificent. His coat gleamed in the courtroom lights, his posture noble but gentle. Jake led him to a spot 30 feet from the Chen family and gave a quiet command. "Down." Rex immediately lay down, his head resting on his paws, his eyes soft. He looked like nothing more than a well-trained family pet. The silence in the courtroom was profound, 200 people barely breathing. Emma stared at Rex, her small chest rising and falling with quick breaths. Lynn kept whispering reassurances. "You're okay, baby. We've got you. You're safe." 5 minutes passed, then 10. Emma didn't move toward Rex, but she didn't panic either. She sat, watching, her fingers absently stroking Mr. Hopper's ears, a self-soothing gesture Dr. Patel had encouraged. Jake spoke softly, his voice carrying in the silent courtroom. "Good boy, Rex, stay." Emma's eyes shifted from the dog to the man. She'd seen Officer Morrison during therapy sessions but had never spoken to him. Now she studied his face, the sadness in his eyes, the gentle way his hand rested on Rex's back. "Rex, sit," Jake commanded quietly. Rex immediately sat up, his movements smooth and controlled. "Down." Rex lay back down. Emma's grip on her mother's hand loosened slightly. "He listens," she whispered. "Yes, baby," Lynn confirmed. "He listens very well." Another 5 minutes passed, 15 total now. Judge Foster's original plan had been to allow 30 minutes for this evaluation, but she'd secretly prepared for it to end in under 5. Emma's ability to remain calm was already exceeding expectations. Then Emma did something no one anticipated. She turned to Dr. Patel and asked, "Can I give him something?" The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Foster's gavel came down once. Quiet. Dr. Patel leaned closer. "Give him what, Emma?" Emma held up Mr. Hoppers. "My bunny, he was with me in the hospital, maybe the doggy should have him now." Lynn's eyes filled with tears. "Sweetheart, you love Mr. Hoppers." "I know," Emma said seriously, "but I'm not scared right now, and maybe if I give Mr. Hoppers to the doggy, he'll know I'm not scared." Dr. Patel looked at Judge Foster, who nodded almost imperceptibly. The psychologist turned back to Emma. "You can try if you want to, Emma, but you don't have to walk all the way to Rex. You can put Mr. Hoppers down partway and we'll give it to him." Emma shook her head. "I want to do it." "Emma, no," David started, but Lynn put a hand on his arm. "Let her choose," Lynn whispered, though her own fear was written across her face. Emma stood up, still holding Mr. Hoppers. She looked so small standing in the vast courtroom, this tiny 3-year-old in her purple dress facing down the trauma that had stolen her childhood. She took one step forward. The courtroom seemed to stop existing. 200 people became statues. Reporters forgot to write. Cameras continued recording, but the operators stood frozen. Emma took another step, then another. Officer Morrison's tears began to fall silently. He'd never imagined this moment, this brave, beautiful child walking toward the dog who'd hurt her. He kept his hand on Rex's back, whispering commands so quietly only the dog could hear them. "Stay. Easy, boy. Gentle." Rex remained perfectly still. His training was evident in every muscle, but more than that, his eyes held something almost human, awareness, understanding perhaps that this moment mattered. Emma took her 5th step, then her 6th. She was halfway there now, 15 feet from Rex. Lynn stood up, unable to stay seated, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. David stood too, his body tense and ready to sprint forward if needed. 7th step, 8th. Emma's hands trembled, making Mr. Hoppers shake, but she didn't stop. 10 feet away now. Emma paused. For a long moment she just stood there looking at Rex. The dog looked back, his eyes gentle, his body language completely submissive. "Hi, doggy," Emma whispered. Officer Morrison nearly broke. His shoulders shook with silent sobs, but he kept his voice steady. "Rex, stay." Emma took 3 more steps. She was 6 feet away now, close enough to see Rex's brown eyes clearly, close enough to see the rise and fall of his breathing. She stopped. "I'm going to put my bunny down," she announced to the room, as if explaining her actions to herself as much as to everyone watching. She bent down, her movements slow and deliberate, and placed Mr. Hoppers on the floor. The white stuffed rabbit with pink ears sat between her and Rex, a bridge between trauma and healing. Then Emma stepped back. 1 step, 2, 3. She retreated to her parents, and David immediately scooped her up, holding her tight. "You did it, baby," he whispered fiercely. "You were so brave." Officer Morrison looked at Judge Foster, silently asking for permission. The judge nodded. "Rex," Jake said softly, "gentle, get the bunny." Rex stood slowly and walked toward Mr. Hoppers. The courtroom watched in absolute silence as the German shepherd lowered his head, opened his mouth, and with extraordinary care picked up the stuffed rabbit. His teeth didn't puncture the fabric. He held it gently, the way a mother dog carries her puppies. Then Rex did something that made Emma gasp. He walked closer, not to Emma, but to a spot about 8 feet from the Chen family, and carefully placed Mr. Hoppers on the ground. He backed away and sat, looking at Emma expectantly. "He gave it back," Emma whispered, wonder in her voice. Dr. Williams was scribbling frantically on her assessment tablet. This level of behavioral understanding, of social awareness from Rex, was remarkable. Emma looked at her parents. "Can I get Mr. Hoppers?" "Are you sure?" Lynn asked. Emma nodded. This time when she walked forward there was less fear in her steps. She reached Mr. Hoppers, picked him up, and looked at Rex. The dog remained sitting, calm and patient. "Thank you for being gentle," Emma said to Rex. Then she did something that made the entire courtroom gasp. She took 1 step closer to Rex and extended her tiny hand, not to pet him but palm out, fingers together, the way Dr. Patel had taught her during therapy sessions. "This is how you say hello to dogs," Emma announced to the courtroom, proud of her knowledge. Rex, well-trained and gentle, didn't move forward to sniff her hand. He simply sat, accepting her gesture from a distance. Emma smiled, a real genuine smile. Then she turned and ran back to her parents, who enveloped her in their arms. Judge Foster waited a full minute before speaking, allowing everyone to process what they'd witnessed. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "This court is prepared to deliver its ruling." The courtroom erupted into whispers. Judge Foster's gavel came down firmly. "Order! I will have order in my courtroom." Silence fell again. "I have witnessed something extraordinary today," Judge Foster began. "A 3-year-old child demonstrated more courage and compassion than most adults will show in their entire lives. This court recognizes Emma Chen's bravery and acknowledges the tremendous journey she and her family have undertaken." She paused, looking at Officer Morrison and Rex. Based on the comprehensive behavioral evaluation conducted by Dr. Sarah Williams, the therapeutic progress documented by Dr. Priya Patel, and what I have observed here today, this court rules as follows. K9 Rex will be retired from active police duty effective immediately. The supporters in the gallery made sounds of protest, but Judge Foster held up her hand. However, Rex will not be euthanized. Relief swept through half the courtroom. Officer Morrison collapsed forward, his head in his hands, sobbing openly. Judge Foster continued, her voice carrying the weight of Solomon-like wisdom. Rex will serve the community in a new capacity, as a therapy and education dog for the Cedar Rapids Police Department's Youth Outreach Program. He will help teach children about police work, safety, and proper interaction with animals. Officer Morrison will transition to the Community Education Division to work alongside Rex in this new role. She turned to the Chen family. Regarding the lawsuit, this court orders the Cedar Rapids Police Department to provide full compensation for Emma Chen's medical expenses, ongoing therapy costs, and damages in the amount of $500,000 to be placed in a trust fund for Emma's future educational and medical needs. Marcus Webb stood, his expression a mixture of satisfaction and surprise. It was more than they'd hoped for financially, though he'd wanted Rex euthanized. Furthermore, Judge Foster added, the police department will implement new protocols for K9 deployment in civilian settings, including mandatory crowd control measures and enhanced handler training. These protocols will be named the Emma Chen Safety Standards. The judge's eyes swept across the courtroom. This case has taught us that justice is not always about punishment. Sometimes it's about healing. Sometimes it's about giving everyone, human and animal alike, the chance to be better than their worst moment. She looked directly at Emma, who sat in her father's lap, still clutching Mr. Hopper's. Miss Chen, you have shown us all what true bravery looks like. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down one final time. The courtroom exploded into controlled chaos. Reporters rushed for the exits to file their stories. Supporters of both sides hugged and cried. Officer Morrison knelt beside Rex, burying his face in the dog's fur, his shoulders shaking with relief and gratitude. The Chen family sat quietly for a moment, absorbing what had happened. Then Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, can I tell the doggy something?" Lynn looked at David, who nodded slowly. Dr. Patel approached. "Would you like me to come with you?" Emma shook her head. "Just Mommy and Daddy." The three of them walked across the now emptying courtroom to where Officer Morrison sat with Rex. Jake looked up, his eyes red and swollen, and immediately started to stand. "Please," David said, his voice catching, "don't get up." There was a long, weighted silence. Two men, both fathers in their own way, one to a daughter, one to a faithful partner, facing each other across a chasm of pain and responsibility. "I'm sorry," Jake said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. Every day I think about what happened. I see her face. I hear her scream, if I could go back." "You can't," David interrupted. His voice wasn't angry, just tired. "None of us can. What happened, happened." Emma squirmed out of her father's arms and stood on her own, looking at Officer Morrison with the serious intensity only a child can manage. "Are you the doggy's daddy?" Jake's breath caught. Yes, I guess I am." "My daddy says everyone makes mistakes," Emma said solemnly. "Even grown-ups, even doggies." Jake couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face as he nodded. Emma looked at Rex, who sat calmly, his eyes gentle. "I'm not scared anymore. Well, maybe a little bit scared, but Dr. Patel says that's okay. Being a little bit scared means you're being careful." She reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a dog treat. Lynn had given it to her that morning, just in case this moment came. "Can I give this to Rex? Dr. Patel showed me how." "Yes," Jake managed to say. "Hold it flat on your palm like this." he demonstrated with his own hand. Emma carefully placed the treat on her small palm and extended it toward Rex. Jake gave a quiet command, "Gentle." Rex leaned forward slowly, delicately taking the treat from Emma's hand with the softest touch imaginable. Emma giggled, the first truly carefree sound she'd made in months. "He's soft," she observed. Then she looked at Jake. "You have to take really good care of him. He's a good doggy, but he needs help being good like I need help being brave." Jake wiped his eyes. "I promise I'll take the best care of him." Emma nodded, satisfied, and returned to her parents. As they walked away, she turned back once. "Bye, Rex. Bye, Rex's daddy." "Goodbye, Emma," Jake whispered. "Thank you." 6 months later, spring had transformed Cedar Rapids. Cherry blossoms lined the streets, and the harsh cold of winter had given way to gentle warmth. Lincoln Elementary School was hosting its annual Safety Day, and the Cedar Rapids Police Department had set up booths demonstrating various aspects of police work. Officer Jake Morrison stood in the center of a crowd of children, Rex sitting calmly beside him. "Who can tell me what K9 stands for?" Jake asked the group of second graders surrounding him. A dozen hands shot up. Jake pointed to a boy in the front. "It sounds like K9, which means dog." "Exactly right. Rex here is a retired police dog. He used to help find people who were lost and keep his fellow officers safe. Now he helps teach kids like you about safety and how to interact with dogs properly." Jake demonstrated commands and Rex performed flawlessly. The children watched with rapt attention. "The most important thing to remember," Jake explained, "is that you should always ask an owner before petting a dog. Even friendly dogs can get scared or confused. Does everyone understand?" The children nodded enthusiastically. In the back of the crowd, partially hidden by other parents, stood Lynn and David Chen. Emma was between them, holding both their hands. She'd been asking to come to the safety fair for weeks, ever since she'd seen the flyer. Emma watched Rex perform his demonstrations, her expression thoughtful. She'd been doing well, sleeping through the night most of the time, playing with friends again, even asking occasionally about maybe, someday, getting a pet. Dr. Patel had called it remarkable progress. Lynn and David called it a miracle. "Do you want to get closer?" Lynn asked Emma gently. Emma shook her head. "Not today, but I can see him from here. That's good enough." And it was. Some healing happened in dramatic courtroom moments. Some happened in quiet increments. A little girl who could now watch a dog from 30 feet away without fear, who could sleep in her own bed, who could laugh again. After the demonstration ended, Jake noticed the Chen family in the distance. He raised his hand in a small wave. David hesitated, then waved back. Lynn did too. Emma, after a moment, gave a tiny wave as well. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. The scars, physical and emotional, would always be there. But it was acknowledgement, understanding, a recognition that everyone involved was doing their best to move forward. That evening the Chens sat together in their living room. Emma was sprawled on the carpet, coloring a picture. She held up her creation, a child holding hands with 2 adults, and in the corner, a dog sitting peacefully. "Who's that?" David asked, pointing to the dog. "That's Rex," Emma said matter-of-factly. "He's being good in my picture." Lynn and David exchanged glances over their daughter's head, both fighting tears. "It's a beautiful picture, baby," Lynn said. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Lynn and David sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Do you think she'll ever completely get over it?" David asked quietly. "I don't know," Lynn admitted, "but I think she'll grow around it. The trauma will always be part of her story, but it won't be her whole story. She's so much more than what happened to her." David nodded, reaching for his wife's hand. "We all are." Across town, Jake sat in his small apartment with Rex at his feet. He was reading through letters from children who'd attended the safety demonstrations, drawings of Rex, thank you notes, questions about police work. One letter stood out. It was on purple construction paper, and the handwriting was clearly that of an adult, but it was signed with a child's careful printing. Emma. The letter read, "Dear Officer Morrison and Rex, thank you for teaching kids about safety. My mommy helped me write this because I'm still learning big words. I wanted to tell you that I'm doing better. I still get scared sometimes, but not as much. Dr. Patel says I'm very brave. I think Rex is brave too. He made a mistake, but he's trying to be good now. That's what brave means, trying even when it's hard. I'm not ready to pet Rex yet. Maybe I never will be, but I'm not scared to see him anymore. That's pretty good, right? Tell Rex I said he's a good boy. Your friend, Emma, age 3 3/4. Jake read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the careful letters. Then he knelt beside Rex, holding the letter where the dog could see it, as if Rex could understand its significance. You hear that, buddy? You're a good boy. His voice broke. You made a terrible mistake and we've both paid for it, but we got a second chance. Not everyone gets that. Rex's tail wagged gently, and he rested his head on Jake's knee. We're going to spend the rest of our lives earning that second chance, Jake promised. Every child we teach, every life we touch, it's all for her, for Emma. Years would pass. Emma would grow up, graduate high school, attend college. The scars on her shoulder would fade to thin white lines, barely visible. The emotional scars would fade too, though they'd never completely disappear. She would never own a dog. That bridge remained one step too far. But she wouldn't fear them either. She'd learn to exist in a world with dogs, to appreciate them from a distance, to understand that one bad experience didn't define an entire species. And she'd carry with her a unique wisdom, that healing is possible, that forgiveness is complex, that justice sometimes looks like compassion, and that the bravest thing anyone can do is face their fears and choose growth over bitterness. Rex would live out his remaining years in service, touching thousands of young lives, teaching children about safety and kindness. When he eventually passed away at the age of 12, the community would mourn him, and among the flowers left at the memorial would be a small bouquet of purple wildflowers with a note. For Rex, who taught me that everyone deserves a second chance. Emma. 2 lives, forever changed by one terrible moment. 2 lives, ultimately defined not by that moment, but by what came after. The little girl who faced her fear. The dog who got his second chance. And a community that learned that sometimes the hardest path is the one that leads to healing. The end.